My name's Sean Brown, and I grew up about 5 minutes north of here. Thanks, Joya Harding. And,
I'll take that.
In Beaver Dam, I'm what's called Old Asheville. My parents came from Avery County. My dad was a radio announcer. I'll always be known as his son, Little Joe Brown's son. And he moved where the work was, so we wound up here, and he wouldn't leave for Charlotte or Atlanta, so here we are. And I've been in the insurance business about 20 years. I've had Adams and Brown Insurance for about 16. And even though I'm North Asheville native, I live in LA, which we call Lower Asheville, down in Arden. And been part of that community for a long time. Real active in my church down there, and just love living here. I left and came back, and there's no other place in the world I'd rather be.
Strange to do this sitting down, so I guess I'll stand up, just because I'm used to that. Is that all right?
Sure.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gloria Berlin with Allstate Insurance, the Gloria Berlin Agency. I've been in the insurance business probably since I'm 18. My first insurance job was in Manhattan, New York, and it was called Hartford Steam Boiler Inspection and Insurance Company. And let me tell you, it was a challenge being 18 and being a woman in an all-boys club. Need I say more? Went back to school, got married in South Florida, came up here about 17 years ago. The rest is history. I've had my licenses since 2007, and I look forward to talking to you a little bit more. Gloria Berlin, Allstate Insurance. I am your good hands agent. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you read me?
No, I'm not working.
Use the red light.
Use the red light. Use the red light.
Yeah.
We're going to share.
Okay, we'll try this again. My name is Sam Craig. I own my own law firms, Craig Law Firms, Transmit. I do business and business transactional and business litigation law. What does that mean? Business law means setting up businesses, managing businesses, drafting contracts, reviewing contracts, selling businesses, acquiring businesses, things that you do from a transactional standpoint with your business. And in addition to that, I also do business-related and contract-related litigation. What's that mean? That means that when a partnership blows up or an LLC blows up, and that happens, I litigate those matters. In addition, I also do contract disputes. And so if someone didn't do what they were supposed to do or didn't pay you or those kind of things, those are contract-based disputes. I also do real estate disputes. I do not do real estate closings. I don't do family law. I don't do bankruptcy. I don't do a number of those things. My focus is on business law and business litigation. So Sam Craig, Craig Law Firm.
So, go ahead. You want us to go ahead and start? Yeah, just go ahead and start. We're going to let you guys talk about we'll go into a Q&A session.
Okay, so I am actually going to put myself on a timer so that I don't run out, because I have been known to just get a little talking a little bit too much. In the areas that we're talking about, my understanding is limiting business liability. And for my purposes, I think of it in two ways actually: limiting liability and also limiting the effects of liability, because those are two different things and you approach them different ways. From a standpoint of limiting liability, there are a number of ways to let's first define liability. Liability means that you're responsible for. You or your entity is responsible for something. If you hit someone with your car, you are responsible. You are liable. And so, how do you limit your business liability? Now, from a legal standpoint, there are various ways. Primarily, formation of a business entity that is separate from yourself, or a good contract, or both. So I'm going to talk about those briefly. Business entity formation is, and some of them that you're quite familiar with, are obviously corporations, and you may have heard, and some people still have not heard about, limited liability companies, LLCs. And a limited liability company obviously limits liability. The thing to recognize about an entity formation is that not everybody has to be an entity. You don't have to have a corporation. You don't have to have an LLC to be in business. Obviously, you're sole proprietors or partnerships and stuff, things like that. Actually, a partnership is a form of entity in itself. But when you are a sole proprietor, you have direct personal liability. Also, if you have just a general partnership, you have direct personal liability. And what does that mean? That means that if you're in a partnership and your partner messes up, then you are personally responsible, could be sued personally for their mistake and would face personal liability. So, by forming an entity, such as a limited liability company or a corporation, you place a separate entity that does business with someone else. So the LLC does business with the world, or the corporation does business with the world. And the corporation or the LLC, and I'm just using those as examples, there are other forms, but I'm going to focus on those. They are responsible. They contract with the public. They sell to the public. And any problem, if there's any liability, then that entity is liable, as long as you do it correctly. One of the problems that I run into regularly with people that have corporations or LLCs, primarily corporations, someone sets up a corporation and then they don't act like it. They don't issue shares. They don't have shareholder meetings. They don't have board meetings. And what you do is set yourself up for things that people like me suing you on behalf of my client, saying we're going to what's called pierce the corporate veil. We're going to come get your personal assets anyway. I've done it. I've done it to people. I'm defending one of those right now. It happens. So if you have a corporation, do it right. From a limited liability company, I really prefer limited liability companies for small businesses in many ways because they're much easier. You don't have to have boards. You don't have to have shareholder meetings, and you don't have to have those meetings. You do have to do things that still enact that LLC. You still have to act like an LLC. Such things as putting LLC at the end of your name everywhere. If you look at my card, it has PLLC. That's a professional limited liability company. It's everywhere. It's on my letterhead. It's everywhere. So think just little things. There are several other things. The other thing I mentioned was not only the limiting your liability, and that's how you limit your liability in some ways through an entity formation. The other way to limit liability is through a good contract. A good contract sets up the distinctions between this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm liable for. If you say, I will build you a house, one of the contractors down there said, I will build you a house under these very specific set of instructions, and then they come back and say, well, I also wanted a swimming pool. Well, that's not in the contract. You're not liable for giving them a swimming pool because you did not contract for a swimming pool. So a good contract between you and the public. Contracts take different forms. They don't have to be the formalized contracts that we're familiar with. They can be just when you issue a flyer or put something out that says, this is what we do, you're in effect offering a contract to the public. The public comes to you and accepts that offer and contract. So you can be in breach of contract even though you don't have a signed agreement. You have an offer and acceptance of an offer. So that's effect is limiting your liability through a good contract. You also, and I've already touched on this from the standpoint of limiting the effects of your liability. How do you limit the effects of liability? I'm going to go back to the corporate example. If you have a separate entity that is dealing with the public, and something happens, something goes wrong, and that entity is, let's just say, General Contractors are Us Incorporated. General Contractors are Us contracts to build a house and a swimming pool. It's in a house, and then the entity is responsible for that. If they don't put the swimming pool in, they get sued. Okay, what about Joe Smith, who's the owner of that business? Is he personally liable? No, because the entity is between the public and himself and his personal assets. So you reduce the effects limit the effects of the liability through good contracts and also through your entity as well. So when you think about it in terms of liability, and limiting your liability and limiting the effects of your liability. I will say, I've got 30 seconds here left to say, when I deal with people that are setting up businesses, and I do this on a regular basis, one of the things I talk to them about are various types of insurance. I don't sell, I say, you need a good insurance person. There are various things that come up where we interface with insurance, such as a buy-sell agreement. If you have if you're in an LLC with 3 members of an LLC and you have a buy-sell agreement and one of them dies, how do you pay that buy-sell agreement out? You have life insurance on each other so that it comes up. That is my sign to stop. Okay, Sam Craig Law Firm, and I believe we'll have some question and answer later.
Thank you, Sam. I feel better for
I really like that. That's really good. And I'm going to time myself because I could get very long-winded and we don't want to do that. Okay, Gloria Berlin with Allstate Insurance. One of the main reasons that I got into the insurance business was because and the reason why I opened my agency is that I wanted to make sure that my clients always had the correct amount of insurance. In one of your handouts, you'll see that there's a circle of protection. And that what that means is that all your money's related. So if you go into a situation where you're not looking at the whole picture, you can find yourself with a gap of insurance. And that's when the attorneys will come in and make sure that that gap is paid, whether it's out of your pocket or out of some other way. So that's what I do. How I go about doing this is, let me backtrack one more thing. For example, your business can dictate the type of insurance that you need. For example, I'm an insurance agent. I am required by my company that I represent to have errors and omission. Why? To protect them from litigation, okay? And things happen, you know. Errors and omission, really what it does is that it's stating that I made a mistake or I omitted something. I mean, I know of an agent recently in this area when we had that whole hailstorm come down. In April, a gentleman came in the office, gave that person some information to change coverages. Turns out that that policy was canceled, and then when they went to reinstate the policy, it was a lapse in coverage. Well, that person got on the phone, called the errors and omission people, and anyway, it got turned out where the policy should never have been canceled in the first place, but there was a situation that that kind of coverage would protect, number one, the company and also the agent. You know, so these are the things that dictate your coverages. My approach to helping clients with their insurance needs is looking at their whole picture. And I do get involved with asking very nosy questions, and I take pleasure in that, just so that you know. And it's really, the truth is that if I don't have a whole picture, I don't know how to protect them. So if I know that they have a house, or, you know, for example, I am incorporated. So I make sure that everything is separate in my insurances, okay? So when they come into the office, I make sure I sit down, I get all of their information, I make sure that they can get whatever the coverages they need. However, with that, you don't also want to over-insure them either. And my experience has been, and I'm sure you'll attest to this, that sometimes agents that are not fabulous will always look for their own endeavors, their own, what they need that month, as opposed to looking at, you know, the person, you know, in that little thing that says it puts the customer in the middle, and that's a belief. That is what we do. That's how we do that. I want to get to a definition real quick because I think that this also explains what we do. General liability insurance is designed to protect business owners and operators from a wide variety of liability exposures. Exposures could include liability arising from accidents resulting from the insured's premises or operations, products sold by the insured, operations completed by the insured, and contractual liability. So what happens is that we can go ahead, we give an offer of insurance, you guys go ahead and take that insurance by paying your premium, and then there's this discussion about what kind of participation you're going to do with that insurance, which would be your deductible. With your deductible, you're saying, I'm going to take some of the risk of if I get a financially devastating loss. What do I mean by that? I mean that when we're getting insurance, we are basically saying, I'm going to give you a premium, which is, they're accepting it. I'm going to give you a premium, and then you're going to take care of it. You could literally give a premium forever and never use your insurance. However, the mindset is, let's get the insurance that I have in place if the worst case scenario would come about, and then forget about it and have a great time and enjoy your business. That's basically what we do. Each person's needs are different. I mean, if I'm dealing with a client that's got tons of money, well, we really go in there and really try to protect that money. And then if there's just this new guy that's a landscaping contract, we got to keep his insurance down so he can stay in business and so that he can grow. So there's all these different kinds of ways that we can do that. One of the things that I would recommend is get as high as a deductible as you can afford. And what I mean by that is that if you can afford to get like a $2,500 deductible, that's going to lower your premiums. You're not going to be putting in tons of claims, and it's going to take care of you sharing the cost of the insurance. That's what we do. We always center the need of the client. Our agenda is never involved because we want to be able to, get in my bed at night and say, okay, I did a good job today. Thanks so much.
A lot of you guys might remember Saturday Night Live when it was funny in the old days, when Belushi and Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd were on. They had a running skit about the Billy Goat Tavern.
Mike back farther.
Okay, is that good?
It's gonna blow up the video audio.
Where they had a Greek restaurant called the Billy Goat Tavern. They go, chips, cheeseburger, cheeseburger, no Coke, Pepsi. Well, they had a skit one night where it burned, and they were claiming all sorts of stuff. The agent came, who was Jane Curtin. Then at the end of the skit, they found out Bill Murray's character is living in the back of the restaurant. They denied the claim. Everybody thought it was funny, but that can happen. And let me tell you, folks, with business, it's a minefield. You think you're covered, and you're not. The big thing we do is this. What do you do? That's the first question we ask. Where do you do it? Do you own that property? Do you rent? How do you get there? That's the major stuff. You could go down and pick up an order from Bill and get in a wreck. They find out you're doing business on a personal auto, you may not be covered. So you need to sit down with your agent and say, this is what I do, this is how I do it, and let the agent tailor the policy around what you do. Everybody's different. Every need is going to be different. If you work out of your home and you think your homeowners are going to cover your business, no. You need to talk to your agent about that. If you're living on a cot in the back of your business, you need to talk to your agent about that. I mean, it's so different. And what Gloria really touched on, the errors and omissions, is huge. It's getting bigger. I've been in business 20 years, and if you're in business a long time, it's not if, but when you're going to need it. I've had to use it a couple of times. You think, well, I don't build anything, I don't do anything. Well, let me tell you, in this day and age of the internet and social media, you can send somebody an email, you can write a message on their Facebook page, and you give them wrong information, you're going to need that errors and omission, because they're going to print that out and take it to an attorney and sue you. So that's very, very important. It's probably the most rising insurance as far as needs that I see right now. I mean, you come in, we can write you a business owner's policy, a liability or whatever, but the business paradigm has just changed because of social media and the internet. So you need to make sure you CYA, and I think you people know what that stands for. And you don't always need what's people come in and say, what's the cheapest thing I can get? Well, that's not always what you need. I mean, we may sell it to you, we'll advise against it, and we'll make you sign a paper saying you have cheap insurance. You'll date it and sign it, and it'll hold up in court. But you need to insure yourself as to what you need. And people don't like insurance because it's intangible. You can't take it home, you can't drive in it, you can't go on vacation in it. But at the end of the day, you may need it more than anything in the world. So the best thing you can do is sit down with your agent, be honest, tell them what you do, how you do it, where you do it, when you do it, and how you get there. And people want to buy insurance on the internet these days, and I just don't think that's a good idea. It's so complicated that you really need to sit down with somebody who knows what they're doing and talk to them. And we can save you as much money as a lizard and or more, and give you better advice. You're not dealing with 1-800 minimum wage. Maybe I don't speak English as my first language and person on the other line. You're dealing with people who have been in this a long time. All my employees have been in business with me. Most of them been there up to 20 years. We've got like 100 years combined experience between us. So, we've seen it all and done it all. Or we usually think that every week we get something new. But we know more than somebody like that. So just take the time to go to your agent, whoever that is, and tell them what you're doing and how you're doing it. And be honest and be upfront, and you'll get what you need so you can navigate that minefield and not get blown up. So thanks a lot, and
I guess what, panel, questions and answers?
question and answers for anybody.
Does anybody have any questions? I do.
Yeah, I can take that. Okay, just Sean for a minute. You're talking about Geico, or weren't talking about Geico, but just in general, like when commercialized or big corporations like that offer insurance to a company or an individual, like how do people, what you're saying that they get sucked into it and they don't, you could say for more technically, correct?
Yeah.
Now, does Geico offer business insurance?
They broker about anything that I've seen, but what I see a lot of those TV people,
What you get when you're not dealing with a local agent is you get we call bait and switch. And if I did it, I'd get sued. But because Geico's owned by Warren Buffett, I don't know if you all knew that, he can get away with it. They'll sign you up without running your credit, your claims history, take the down payment, and a month later your premium goes up because they finally do it. And then you're sucked into a contract for 6 months or a year you can't get out of it. If you do, it's going to cost you. Every single person I've lost to them has come back to me within a year saying, get me away from this company. So that's what's so important to have a local agent like me or Gloria. You walk in, you're going to get honest advice and honest coverage, and that's what you want more than anything. I mean, people are willing to pay for what they need. I'm willing to pay somebody local to do something that's going to give me a better service or a better product than an 800 number somewhere. I mean, nothing infuriates me more than to call somebody in English as their second language. They don't understand what I'm saying. And that drives me absolutely insane. I'm sure it does you people too. So, we care about people. We're part of the community. We see people out and about. And I couldn't face myself in the mirror if I did somebody knowingly wrong or sold them something they didn't need or something that was wrong coverage. We're part of you, and we want to look after you guys. We want you to look after us too. And that's what's so important, I think.
Again, I'm John from Landry, Jail Builders. You guys talk a lot about protecting us ourselves, and as a builder, I just want to know if there's anything from the consumer standpoint that they should have when building a home or entering into a contract like that to protect themselves from liability or any of those issues on the job site.
I would recommend builder's risk insurance on something like that because it'll protect their situation, but a lot of contractors carry that liability themselves, and it's unusual, but I would recommend builder's risk.
I have a quick question. What would you say, just advice to the small business owner, the micro business, even the independent distributor? If they did 3 things to protect themselves from liability, what are those 3 most important things they should do first?
Well, I would go back to the original thing about having a good contract. And like I said earlier, everybody doesn't have to be an entity. And there are many business people, and many of you here don't necessarily need to be, wouldn't necessarily have to be an entity. You wouldn't necessarily benefit from it. You want to make sure you have good insurance. But I would get back to the original thing, which was, my original thing was a good contract. And again, carefully make sure that when you put something on your website or in a pamphlet, that it's accurate and that it properly reflects what you're going to do. Because sometimes people will overstate something, or they will offer something that sounds good, or they will just copy some language from somebody else's website that looked pretty good. Make sure that what you are saying that you're going to do is what you're planning on doing. Also, that comes to about what your rates are and that sort of thing. Make sure you haven't, when it's finalized, make sure everybody's on the same page. It's called meeting of the minds in legal terms. So have a good contract. That would be one of the first things I would say for a micro business, and I will let y'all know.
It's funny that, as you said, that the meeting of the minds, I'm actually going to write it down, is that everything needs to be clear, you know, in your brochures. I was actually thinking that I'm a registered rep with the state of North Carolina and also with the federal government. So anything that I would do is regulated by that entity. So with that, if you have things that are governmentally controlled and make sure you get permission to do anything, especially on your social media, on your LinkedIn, on your Twitter pages, make sure that would be the primary thing I would work with.
Just to add one more thing, when we're talking about a contract, and when we spoke about this earlier, if you're dealing with, if you're laid down with wolves, you know, you got problems. And so make sure you're dealing with someone. And then the question about a general contractor, if you're going to have an addition put onto your home, don't just check them out on Angie's List and that sort of thing. Say, show me your insurance. Show me the insurance. Don't just say, yeah, I've got insurance. Show me the insurance. And the deck page or the declarations page. And so deal with quality people, quality contractors, and make sure you are dealing with someone that is in good business form themselves.
What you want to ask for is a certificate of insurance. The agent can send it to you, put your name on it, and that protects you right there. If you don't get a certificate, don't let them do business with you.
Another thing I'd like to note, that as being a contractor, workers' comp. Make sure somebody's carrying workers' comp. You know, when they come to work on your home, somebody falls off the roof on your house and they don't carry workers' comp insurance, you're liable for it. So, you know, like they're saying, make sure you got reputable people that you're doing business with.
You next. What do I, chocolate liver?
Yep. No, Bill, you just look like chocolate.
We love that.
Bill's tasty. Okay, so quick question that I'm curious about personally. I know insurance is just, it's in my ass, but it's just a big mess as far as normal people are concerned. What are some of the typical insurances that most business owners don't have that they should have?
And I will just briefly address that because that's really more of an insurance question. But again, something I mentioned earlier is if there is a buy-sell agreement between you and other members in your LLC or other partnerships. And by the way, I hate partnerships because they just have all kinds of problems. But if you're going to do something like that, go ahead and get an LLC. But you would, in a buy-sell agreement, that's something that you have to plan for there are lots of other insurance questions that come up, but most of those are some outside of my realm. But I'm just going to have this on.
Really, truly, it depends on the business. I'll just give you my business so that this way you have an idea. With my business, I am an agency owner, so what I have is it's called a business owner's policy. So it covers my general liability, plus it also covers my contents. It also covers glass coverage, because I have humongous glass in the front, and signage. And just give a woohoo to Arlene Sullivan and Signorama, is that I came in after that windstorm that came in right after the holidays, and I don't know how much that sign would weigh. Sign was hanging, it has normally 3 chains, and I was like, why is it wobbling? And there it was, hanging on 1 chain. So I immediately called them, they came out and stabilized it, and then they repaired it. So it really depends on your circumstances. Now, for somebody that's a massage therapist like you really just need liability insurance to make sure that, sorry, you're close next to each other. You really need liability insurance. You know, maybe some contents coverage, but it really just depends on your need. I also do have workers' comp.
What we talked about earlier, errors and omissions, what most people don't have and they probably need. But I would say you also need to look at your vehicle and how you're using it. Because a lot of times personal auto won't cover, like I said, and some of the worst lawsuits you'll see involve traffic accidents. I mean, there's a lot of traffic accident lawyers out there just looking for stuff like this. Seems like every one of my customers that's involved in an accident gets a letter from a paralegal, let us represent you and sue so-and-so on your behalf. And they don't really need to, but there's so much of that out there. Sam can tell you, we live in a litigious society. Everybody wants to sue. And everybody's looking for something for free.
Sam's got to eat.
So you really got to watch what you're using for your vehicle in your business. You know, like maybe a massage therapist, you need liability, but you got to watch that vehicle if you're taking it to people's business and house. That's what I would say.
Who else has a question? Any other? Bill? Oh, you were Chuck Liver, I forgot.
I think we all agree that we like to buy local, and buying from that reptile we were talking about isn't buying local. But I guess the good news is when you buy from the reptile, it's convenient because they send you the policy in the mail, and then when you have a claim, you can ask your mail carrier to take care of the claim for you. So it just doesn't work. You really need to do your insurance business locally. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Anybody? Mike?
Sam, can you have an LLC with just one member?
Yes, you can,
You can have what's a single member LLC, and there are reasons to do it that way. Now, for tax purposes, I'm not a tax professional, I'm not a CPA, I'm not giving you tax advice here, but I know that it is what's called a disregarded entity for tax purposes. So some people want to set up a business sometimes for the tax, quote-unquote, tax advantages. Well, that's not my end of it, but but you need to be aware that if you are a single member LLC, that you are what's called a disregarded entity. One thing that people are not aware of, and just briefly touch on this, is about, you hear people talk about, I'm going to set up an S corporation. Well, you don't set up an S corporation, you set up a corporation, and then you make an election, which is called an S election with the IRS. So the corporation is a legal entity. The S election, or the S component of that, is with the IRS. That's an agreement between the entity and the IRS. By the way, you can make an S election with an LLC. So you can have an LLC with an S election.
Got time for one last question, if anybody has one?
I have another one. Well, I've been dealing with Sam for years. online and off, and I call him the social media attorney. But besides me and my issues online dealing with social media and everything and stuff you face there, what other people have you dealt with or situations concerning social media and liability have you dealt with?
That's a great question. I'm interested in hearing the answer to that one.
Well, I'll say this, it ain't pretty. When one area I have run into in particular is having someone start saying negative things about you or your business online in some type of public forum. And then, in effect, either libeling you, slander is spoken, libel is written. So putting something on the internet that is false and damaging, but they live in Oklahoma. And so how can you do that? There's some forums like Publix or Topics. My God, I have had so many people call me about that forum where people just get brutal. And I'm looking at this stuff, and I will tell you that it is very hard to do. For one, very hard to have much effect, particularly if someone's living in Florida or Oklahoma or something along those lines, because they're not here. Now, there are laws in North Carolina that address that, but it's hard to get the local sheriff's department or police department worked up about it, and also it also has to go to the other location, so that you have to also wind up dealing with someone in Florida or Oklahoma or something like the sheriff's department or police entity there, and so the police and the people here, it's not that I guess they don't take it seriously, they just don't want to deal with it because it's just too much of a hassle. And so that is an area that you have to be very careful about. I think when you put yourself out there, someone, if you're not careful, will start wearing you out. And there's some crazy people out there. And that is probably the thing that I see the most and have the biggest trouble dealing with. Because when it comes right down to it, I have to say, I write someone a letter, a cease and desist letter, I cite the North Carolina law, I tell them how it will be applied to them in whatever state that they're in, and they keep right on doing it. And so then the cost and everything of trying to make that happen, and even the practical reality of trying to make it happen, when you're, again, trying to deal with someone, say, in Florida, and I keep using Florida and Oklahoma because those are two states that I've dealt with this kind of thing, and through what I guess would be kind of a social media kind of thing.
Yes, same thing on Reddit. For example, just yesterday they're slandering somebody, said they got drugged to 2 restaurants, so there's a big thing about that now here, and people going crazy about it.
And it's hard to control, and it really is. There are some laws out there, but they're hard to apply and often are ignored or not applied.
Okay, so technically in the end they're hard to enforce, especially if somebody's consistent. Usually what Thomas actually said with controls, just let them die out.
And that's actually my recommendation many times when someone comes to me and says, just stay quiet, don't respond, and see if they will just die off. And just let it die off. And that sounds like, well, what kind of legal advice is that? You know, I want to get people coming, I want to kick this guy's ass. Okay, well, they're not here. And by the way, it's going to cost you a fair amount of money for me to do it. And to what effect? What in the end is, have you spent, and I'm not trying to talk myself out of business, but have you thrown good money after bad? And I try to make my clients, just as I would here, that try to make my clients aware that the return on investment of this may not be worth it. And the better option may be to try to just let it die off. Now, there are processes with different online entities, such as Topics and others, where you can file a complaint, and you have to do it in a particular way, and it's hard to find that process on their websites. I've gone through it. And so it does, there is a process there where someone can be shut down. But in particular on Topics, they will sometimes and quite often appear with a new name, a new identity, and start doing the same thing and then go after them again.
Same thing on Yelp, you could challenge a review now and all that stuff.
Full round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.